I was having emotional breakdowns at the Thanksgiving dinner table at 12 years old because my uncle was pro-life, you know? I mean, I literally, like, in tears, I would put my fork down and, like, run out of the room, and I was like, Thanksgiving's over for me, you know? Like, you guys are conservatives, and I hate you, and you're oppressing me. And they were like, how is your 12-year-old, like, this angry and this politicized, you know? I was incredibly rebellious. I don't really remember what exactly started off that kick, but I got into riot girl culture really early, when I was 13 or 14 years old, and I was very angry all the time, so I shaved my head when I was 15. Was a punk rocker and a riot girl and all this stuff, and my parents were very frustrated. They were like, why did we come to this country so our daughter could act like this? So I always felt very suffocated by social expectation, and no one tells you at the career fair you can make a career out of that, but that's the direction it ultimately went. No, I grew up in a suburban town outside of New York City, and that's why I sound like a valley girl when I talk. And you know, definitely went to one of those high schools where everyone wanted to be the captain of the football team, or I think the lacrosse team, or a cheerleader. And you know, I was one of the freaks, geeks, and weirdos, and my friends were all like hackers and wore trench coats. And you know, I was really angry and just so upset that everyone was so normal. And my parents were not fully aware of how difficult high school was for us. I think that for them, they were like, we're in the United States, you're going to get an education, you're going to do your best. And I wasn't really a good student, didn't understand. They were like, why are you doing so poorly? And later have found out that it was because I didn't, you know, I was made fun of a lot, I was picked on and teased it for being different and all this stuff. And so I had a very kind of disconnected relationship with my surrounding students. My first visions of women were family members, and so my parents are from India, but I was born in the United States, and we lived back and forth between the United States and India as a child, and my parents lived in a joint family house in India, and so I had about 9 different aunts that all lived in the same house, and they gathered together, they cooked a lot of their meals together, they cleaned together, and they, you know, gossiped a lot and chatted, and, you know, I mean, they were middle-class Indians that had, you know, servants and stuff. And so it was just a very interesting model of femininity, one very much of motherhood and, you know, holding culture in the family and stuff. But I think my first visions of women in pop culture that I can remember are, just totally dating myself, but I think En Vogue maybe, and probably Madonna, which says more about me than you need to know, probably. It was either write or be really angry all the time and have no outlet, so it was kind of survival. I came out of the school of thought of, you know, predominantly women of color, and that has impacted the way that I see feminism in terms of it as being an absolute necessity as opposed to a choice. I think that when I open a mainstream newspaper and it continually still has stories that shame women, and much of the media that, you know, impacts the lives of not just women, young people, young men, you know, all of these talks about the masculinity crisis and just really problematic representations of young people that continually pervade mainstream media. That's what motivates me personally, and gets me writing. I am a leader in the sense that I am the executive editor of a, you know, very well-known feminist blog. Feminist blogs have replaced consciousness raising groups, right? They've replaced on-the-ground initiatives to increase membership in feminist organizations. They've really displaced all of those things. There's a good chance my 5 years ago self might think I'm a sellout today or something. You know, I mean, I was so radical and arrogant 5 years ago, but but you know, yeah, 5 years ago I wasn't as concerned with messaging that reached a broader audience. I was very insular, and through a lot of push and pull, I have really gone through an evolution. My hope, my end goal, is definitely to create sustainable avenues for feminist self-expression. We are in such a critical time right now for young people to be engaged. Like, I think young women are incredibly active and incredibly intelligent in the ways that they're taking on all of these mixed messages they're getting from the media, either to be chaste or to be slutty, or, they're continually objectified, if not more so. I mean, I sometimes think about, like, if these were the images I saw when I was a young woman, the images that young women see in the media now, like, I feel like my sense of femininity would be a little bit distorted, and I would think that my value was based on what I look like. It's almost like we're in this generation of hyper-objectification. The ultimate defining moment in our generation is that there isn't one, and I think that's very difficult for traditional media and even for feminist theory to accept that maybe there isn't a fourth wave. I do think that feminism has shifted we may not see necessarily feminist organizing happening, but feminists are organizing. And that's the shift, I think, in our generation, is that activism has really become more issue focused. And so you could have a series of political ideologies, and feminism could be one of them, but you're working on economic justice, or you're working on slut shaming, or you're working on the environment. And that is the most exciting thing about our generation, and I think the defining moment is the perfect postmodern answer, is that we kind of don't have a definition. We are a variety of things at the same time. But if you are into progressive politics and you may not identify as a feminist, you are always 2 clicks away from a feminist blog, and I think that has brought people that may not necessarily have taken feminist thought seriously, or feminist thought was locked in the academy, to broader audiences in that sense. I don't necessarily know if the word feminism is going to mean anything in 10 years. And I'm hoping that that's for a good reason. I'm not hoping it's because we've had some crazy backlash and the word became illegal or something, but it's because it's assumed that everyone's a feminist. And so you don't even need to say it. It's almost tacky if you're not a feminist. My name is Samhita Mukhopadhyay, and I'm the executive editor of feministing.com, and I'm also a writer.
Today, I just woke up and I said,